Hello, and welcome to our presentation on the application of structural family therapy. My name is Casey Sims, and I'm presenting alongside Logan Rassman. For this presentation, we will apply structural family therapy to a family case study. We aim to demonstrate how this approach can help address family dynamics and guide therapeutic interventions.
Salvador Minuchin developed the structural family therapy model, which helps marriage and family therapists address dysfunctional family structures that lead to dysfunction by altering the family structure. Therapists create systemic change within the family system by addressing and modifying the family's hierarchies, roles, and boundaries. Minuchin believed that changing a family's dysfunctional structure would change the system's interaction and behavioral patterns. Minuchin suggested that therapists targeted and tried to alter the following key concepts to achieve lasting change within the family system. First, family structure refers to the rules that govern the family's interaction patterns. Dysfunction occurs when these patterns are unhealthy, so therapy intervention strives to adjust the structure to achieve healthier interactions and functioning. Subsystems are smaller units within the family, such as parental, sibling, or spousal units, each with specific functions. For example, the parental subsystem functions to take care of and raise the children. An individual can also be considered a subsystem. Boundaries define the separations between the subsystems. Rigid boundaries indicate disengagement, diffuse boundaries lead to enmeshment, and clear boundaries are healthy and promote balanced relationships. Hierarchy refers to the power dynamics within the family. Dysfunction occurs when these dynamics shift to give subsystems more power than is optimal. For example, an unhealthy hierarchy occurs when the children hold more authority than their parents, disrupting the family structure and balance. The therapist targets these concepts to achieve systemic change within the family system so that they can function better.
Structural family therapy is grounded in general systems theory, which views the family as an interconnected system where each member's behavior influences and is influenced by others. Boundaries and hierarchy are key concepts in this framework, which help define family structure. Boundaries regulate the emotional and functional closeness between family members. In a well-functioning family system, clear boundaries allow for connection and autonomy. However, when boundaries become rigid, family members may become disengaged, leading to emotional distance. On the other hand, when boundaries are diffuse, enmeshment occurs, where personal autonomy is compromised due to excessive involvement in each other's lives. Hierarchy refers to the distribution of power and authority within the family. A functional hierarchy typically has parents or caregivers in leadership roles, providing structure and guidance. However, problems arise when the hierarchy is imbalanced. For example, a weak hierarchy can lead to role confusion, such as when a child takes on an adult role due to parental dysfunction. An overly rigid hierarchy where authority is inflexible can create conflict and resistance. The therapist's goal is to restructure these dynamics. When boundaries are too diffuse or rigid, therapy establishes a healthier balance between autonomy and connection. Likewise, when the hierarchy is weak or overly rigid, therapy helps restore a functional leadership structure, ensuring that authority is appropriately distributed within the family.
Structural family therapy is built on theoretical constructs such as hierarchy, subsystems, and roles to understand and address problems created by unhealthy family structures. According to Vitir and Minuchin, families work best when these structures are clearly defined and appropriately balanced. Roles determine the expectations and function each family members should have. For example, in a healthy family, parents are in charge of making crucial decisions. Problems arise when roles are inappropriate for a person's age or position in the family hierarchy, such as when a parentified child takes on adult responsibilities. Therapy helps families adjust these roles so they are age-appropriate and fair. Subsystems are smaller groups within the family that assign roles to their members. For instance, the parental subsystem should be responsible for discipline and guidance. The sibling subsystem should provide peer support, and the spousal subsystem should help create a strong family foundation and prioritize mutual accommodation. Families may experience enmeshment, which is over-involvement if boundaries are too diffuse, or disengagement. Before discussing the application of structural family therapy to the case study, I want to discuss the details of the case itself. This discussion is a detailed overview of the case study as stated in the cumulative case study. Bradley and Ollie have been married for 12 years and have an 11-year-old daughter, Lindy. The couple is encountering issues after Ollie experiences 2 miscarriages in 2 years, which has led to more fighting, less communication, and conflicting goals. They deny any instances of violence or substance abuse. Bradley feels he is taking on most of the parenting and household duties, making him resent Ollie's lack of involvement. He wants to have more children, and Ollie refuses. Ollie, on the other hand, is stuck in her grief and feels emotionally distant from Lindy because of the loss of her other children. She finds it hard to connect with Lindy, who reminds her of the children she lost. Finally, Lindy senses the growing tension between her parents and becomes overly involved in the spousal subsystem, comforting her father and trying to help ease the family stress. The triangle creates an unhealthy power dynamic where a child has more power than is optimal. From a structural family therapy perspective, the family struggles with unclear roles and diffuse boundaries between subsystems. The spousal subsystem is unequal, and the boundaries between the parents and child are diffuse, which is leading to enmeshment between Bradley and Lindy and distance between Ollie and Lindy. Therapy aims to help the family restructure their roles, set healthy boundaries, and restore balance.
Selecting the appropriate constellation, or who participates in therapy, is important for addressing dysfunctional family patterns. In this case, conjoint therapy involving Bradley, Allie, and Lindy is the best approach. Having all 3 members in the session allows the therapist to observe interactions in real time and directly address dysfunctional patterns. One concern in this family is the enmeshment between Lindy and Bradley. Lindy has stepped into an adult-like role, acting as Bradley's emotional support. At the same time, Allie has become disengaged following her miscarriages, leading to emotional distance both in her marriage and her relationship with Lindy. By involving the entire family in therapy, Bradley can learn to become less dependent on Lindy while guiding Allie towards re-engagement as a parent. Although conjoint therapy is the primary approach, subsystem sessions will also be helpful. Parental dyad sessions with Bradley and Allie can strengthen their relationship and help them develop a more unified parenting approach. Likewise, parent-child sessions with Allie and Lindy can help repair their emotional bond and reduce Lindy's feelings of detachment. The ultimate goal is to realign family roles, reinforce parental leadership, and establish healthier boundaries, ensuring that each family member has a clear and functional role within the system.
At the beginning stages of therapy, the therapist focuses on the following. First, the therapist prioritizes assessment and observation, where the therapist observes the family's interaction patterns, roles, and behaviors. These observations help identify dysfunctional patterns. In the case of Bradley and Ali, the therapist would notice that Lindy is too involved in the spousal subsystem. She comforts Bradley after arguments, which isn't healthy for a child. The therapist would also see an imbalance in the parental subsystem, where Bradley handles the majority of childcare. During the beginning phase of therapy, the therapist focuses on building rapport or trust with the family members forming the therapeutic system. Joining is essential because it facilitates open communication about the concerns. At the beginning of therapy, the therapist understands the family structure by looking at the interaction patterns to identify power struggles, unclear boundaries, or role confusion. For example, they would see Bradley get angry because he does most of the parenting. They would notice that Mindy is too involved with the adults. Additionally, they would notice she takes on the role of emotional support for Bradley, which isn't healthy for her development. Finally, the therapist collaborates with the family to clarify the goal of therapy. For this case, the therapist may create a contract establishing therapeutic goals of improving communication, clarifying family roles, and reducing conflict.
During the middle phase of therapy, the therapist moves from assessment to active restructuring, guiding the family through systemic change. This phase is crucial in shifting the dysfunctional patterns that maintain the family's distress. A key intervention during this phase is enactment, which allows the therapist to observe and disrupt problematic interactions in real time. For example, in earlier sessions, Bradley may instinctively turn to Lindy for emotional support, reinforcing the enmeshed parent-child dynamic. During enactments, the therapist intervenes, redirecting Bradley toward Allie, reinforcing a strong parental hierarchy and a clearer spousal bond. As therapy progresses, the therapist helps to realign boundaries within the family. Bradley learns to reduce his emotional dependence on Lindy, while Allie becomes more engaged as a parent. This allows Lindy to step back from adult responsibilities and reestablish her role as their child. At this stage, subsystem sessions are introduced to address specific relational challenges. Parental dyad sessions allow Bradley and Allie to rebuild trust, improve communication, and strengthen their co-parenting alliance. Meanwhile, parent-child sessions between Allie and Lindy focus on repairing their emotional connection, allowing Lindy to receive appropriate maternal support rather than stepping into a caretaker role. Therapy progresses in cycles, during which interventions are introduced, observed, and refined to ensure changes become sustainable outside of therapy. By the end of this phase, the family should demonstrate stronger, healthier relationships, setting the stage for long-term structural change.
During the final stages of therapy, the therapist checks to see if the family has made lasting changes and is working to maintain them. The therapist must ensure that Bradley and Ali share parenting responsibilities more equally and that Lindy no longer has adult-level authority. Lindy should now be in a more appropriate child role instead of acting as a support system for her father or being involved in her own parenting decisions. To reinforce these changes, the therapist will encourage Bradley and Ali to continue communicating openly and sharing parenting duties. The therapist will also remind them to maintain clear boundaries so that Lindy is not involved in their relationship issues. For example, they should avoid discussing marital conflicts in front of Lindy or relying on her for emotional support. The therapist will ensure that the enmeshment and disengagement present during the initial session are gone. Finally, the therapist will help the family prepare for life after therapy. The family should be confident handling future challenges on their own. They should now have the tools and maintain healthy roles, set boundaries, and communicate effectively without needing ongoing therapy.
As previously mentioned, one of the most transformative interventions in structural family therapy is enactment, which brings dysfunctional patterns to the surface during therapy sessions. Rather than simply discussing family issues, enactments allow the therapist to observe these patterns in real time and intervene immediately. For example, Bradley may instinctively turn to Lindy for emotional support instead of Allie in therapy. Instead of stopping to reflect on this pattern, the therapist encourages Bradley to interact with Lindy as he normally would, making the enmeshed dynamic visible. At that moment, the therapist interrupts the interaction and guides Bradley to turn to Allie instead, reinforcing the appropriate parental and spousal hierarchy. Over time, this repeated redirection helps Bradley internalize a new pattern of emotional reliance on Allie rather than Lindy. The impact on the family system is immediate and profound. Enactments provide corrective emotional experiences, helping the family experience new ways of relating in the moment rather than just talking about them. This disruption of habitual dysfunctional cycles reinforces stronger boundaries and a clearer hierarchy, ensuring that Bradley and Allie function as co-leaders of the family while Lindy maintains her role as a child. This process leads to second-order change, meaning the family no longer requires the therapist to sustain these healthier interactions. Over multiple sessions, Bradley naturally begins turning to Allie for emotional support, while Lindy no longer feels responsible for managing her father's distress. Instead of simply modifying behavior, the family structure has been permanently redefined, making healthier relationships self-sustaining beyond therapy.
Thank you so much for tuning in. We hope we provided a solid demonstration of how structural family therapy can be applied to a therapy session. Thanks again.